to the broadcast of It's Time with Reverend Nathaniel W. Martin. Here's Reverend Martin.
All right, thank you, Dr. Blackwell. And let me say Hotep Baragani to my Africana Studies colleagues and contemporaries and seekers after the truth. My name is the Reverend Nathaniel Wayne Martin. I'm the pastor of the New Life Institutional Baptist Church here in the city of Los Angeles. And the offering that you are looking at or viewing or listening to is a social justice offering. It's titled It's Time. And what we do is take a more nuanced look at the problems that we are dealing with from a more spiritual, biblical perspective. However, without the hoopalistic, because we all tend to get carried away at the sound of our voice. Amen. And I'm getting carried away already. We are located at 8916 South Main Street, and we're worshiping with our sister church, the Shiloh Missionary Christian Church. And if you're in the area or the Lord leads you, come on by. We'll be glad to see your face in the place, and it will warm our hearts to greet you. All right? All right. This is as I said, is a social justice offering. We concentrate on the environmental, its impact, how we are impacting the environmental, and the economic to ease. And within those two subjects, we can nuance and refer to all of the problems in this country and in the world, and also how the economics has sway over all of us. And then, of course, it's bigger than the United States of America. It's worldwide now, because this capitalistic system has spread its tentacles universally around the world. And so we as the nations of the earth are all participants in the problems and in the dangers, as well as in the benefits and the solutions to the problems which we in our hubris and in our wantonness have subjected the world and the earth to. The pollution primarily, our lakes and our streams and our babbling brooks, as they used to say, are now for the most part polluted. And the factories, yes, and we used to pour our paint down the gutters and all of that, but now that runs into the sea. So we have islands of plastic waste in our oceans, and we as a people, as a species now, just don't seem to be interested in protecting or preserving or cleaning up the earth. And that is a developing problem that is yielding bitter fruit, because we have a group in this country that, at least around the world, especially the industrialists, that downplay or gaslight the importance of climate change. They say that the earth is not warming, and yet the hurricanes that are now being spawned are being spawned earlier, and they have higher gusts, and they're almost all beginning now to be at Category 3 on up to 5. I think that's as far as the scale for measurement of a hurricane goes, and that is on an annual basis. We just had Hurricane Beryl, and thank God it has spent its force on the state of Texas and Galveston and Houston, and they don't still. I was talking to a friend of mine, one of my relatives, Brother Greg Cheeks, and this week, And he's saying how the electricity is still out over much of Houston. Can you imagine your electricity still being out, and here it is Friday, and electrical services has yet to be restored. So the environment is being affected, and of course the economics are always at the top of the line, because we are paying more for our necessities, for the staples, for the ordinary things that you used to could kind of dismiss because they were cheap. But now Western oil and Crisco, it costs you an arm and a leg. And so we have the impact of inflation, and these wars do not make it any better, because when the ships cannot, from that part of the world, cannot come through the Suez Canal, and they have to go 500 or 600 miles around. Well, that 500 to 600 miles has to be, burns up more fuel, and which raises the cost of the exports. And when they are imported over here, that raises the cost of the price that we pay in the store. But of course, we all know that. The Bible says, righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And underline that word any, because whether it's Israel or the United States of America, if the nations are practicing injustice and unrighteousness, it is going to reflect itself in the whole nation. And so we are seeing the days of reproach beginning. And if you have kept up with the news, you know that our erstwhile Supreme Court, it's a shame to call them honorable, but so they have been delineated historically. They're supposed to be honorable men, honorable women, but they're doing some dastardly, ignoble things on that Supreme Court. They cast away precedent, cast away stare decisis. Precedent is gone, stare decisis is gone. And under Ed Bloom, they have dismissed and done away with affirmative action. And now Ed Bloom, under his organization that he calls, let's see what the name of that organization is, American Alliance for Equal Rights, which is a play on the 1866 Civil Rights Act, which was passed to enable the formerly enslaved to be sheltered from the vagaries and from the discrimination and from the racism that was being practiced against them, the newly freed, the formerly enslaved, in other words. The southern plantation owners were anxious to reclaim their property, to get things back like it was, like Pharaoh in Egypt land, who did not want to let the children of Israel go. And he was using all manner of nefarious schemes and stratagems and tactics to retain the people. And so in our nation, following the Civil War, thoughtful men, Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner and others, abolitionists who had won the war, they said, we got to protect these formerly enslaved people from the animus and the hostility of those whom we defeated. And so that's when the 1866 Civil Rights Act was passed, and it was, as I said, was passed to help the formerly enslaved. How the U.S. Supreme Court under well, not, it wasn't Supreme Court, U.S. Supreme Court, but it was the 11th Circuit, could say that this 1866 Civil Rights Act was colorblind. I don't know how they do this. And we like fools, meekly accept it. But I think this time they have gone a bit too far. I'm sure you have heard about the Fearless Fund and how the 11th Circuit has ruled against them. 2 Trump-appointed judges have ruled that the Fearless Fund privately funded efforts to rectify the near total exclusion of black women from venture capital and ensure that black women have access to the resources they need to enjoy economic freedom and succeed in business. Well, now they're saying that was unlawful form of discrimination, racial discrimination, in other words. Even though, again, the 1866 Civil Rights Act was passed to shelter or to shield the formerly enslaved people from racial discrimination, and as a result of the Civil War. And again, I say it was not colorblind. It observed color, because the entire problem, milieu, was the cause of discrimination based on race. The white folks had held the black folks. They had enslaved them, Africans, and brought them here to till the soil, and the language that they used was quite demeaning and degenerative and all those adjectives. But in other words, the African was subhuman according to the human who call themselves white. Now we know that there's no such thing as white in nature. Only people, communities, cultures. And so racism is a convenient tactic that was employed by those who had the power, and they wielded that power, and regardless of the pyramids, regardless of Timbuktu, regardless of all of the advances and achievements of the African people before the European came out of the cave, when the European began to knock on the doors of Africa, he said everything was discovered by him. And him being the European, he rewrote history. And they want to start with slavery, but you have to really start way back in antiquity, before the pyramids were heaped up. Remember, the first physician was called, his name was Imhotep, and he was a master genius. He started building pyramids, and he started doing surgeries, and that was again way back in antiquity. White man likes to talk about before recorded time. Now, the records were there, because as we said, the Africans had developed writing, and had developed literature, and had developed law, had developed medicine, had developed math. Yes, even the complicated math of geometry, and the celebrated formula pi equals 3.14 those were developments. Those were calculations rather, or measurements that were first developed by the great ancient people of Egypt, because until the white man came along, Egypt was in Africa. Now it's on the Mediterranean, according to the white man, or those who consider themselves white. And all of these developments, of course I'm digressing, I got to get back on my subject. Y'all be thinking I'm Joe Biden. All of these developments and achievements were in place before the Greeks at a late stage discovered Thebes, which they renamed Alexandria after Alexander the Great. And I'm not telling you nothing you don't know. But in our country, the black female has always been held down and overlooked and overworked and taken for granted. Even this Southern Christian Leadership Conference took their women for granted. All the men got all the chief roles, including Dr. King and Abernathy and all Shuttlesworth and the whole lot. But it was women like Ella Baker and Diane Nash and Daisy Bates and that should have been given their due. But of course, like I said, the men held sway, held power, and so the women were not allowed to have executive positions in any male-dominated organization, including the church. And so in the modern age, because of the near total exclusion of black women to have access for venture capital. Venture capital is capital which investors have accumulated, and they tell people, if you have an invention or you have an idea, come here and give it to us, and if we like it, we will fund it. And over $1 billion every year. But the black woman only gets less than 1% of all of those grants, of all of those investments in new ideas. So that is why the black women created what they call the Fearless Fund, where they would give $20,000 to women, black women, entrepreneurs. Well, you guessed it. Ed Bloom, who is also the cause that there is no longer affirmative action, after having the Supreme Court, rule in his favor and overturn affirmative action all across this country, then Ed Bloom zeroed in and concentrated and focused on this black women's organization, which was exclusively for black women, just like the Chinese organization was exclusively for Chinese, and the Korean organization was exclusively for Koreans, and just like the Mexican organization are exclusively for Mexican. And so the black people, who were always on the bottom historically, finally decided, well, that we better pool our money, and then we'll try to help each other. For generations, when foreigners came here, they got together, they pooled their money. If it wasn't no more than $1 a week, they had to participate in a pool, a fund. And that fund was to help them economically to build themselves up and get themselves going. All groups have had to do that in this country. Of course, the white man, those who call themselves white, have had a leg up because they were able to oppress and enslaved the African. So the white man have always had a fund. He always had access to capital. Who did not have access to capital was the black man and the black woman. As we said, the black woman has always been the bottom. She has always been the slave of the slave. And so in business, you got to have capital. And so these black women, the lady's name, the CEO rather, is Arian Simone. She's the founder and the CEO of the Fearless Fund. And as we said, that was because black women did not have or do not have access to bank loans and all of that milieu. And just like we didn't have access to housing loan. But it looks like just like the white folks in Oklahoma would not let the black folks whom they pushed out of their town, Tulsa, and caused them to build Greenwood because they could not do commerce with the white people because at that time segregation was predominant. Jim Crow was in the ascendancy and the supremacy. But yet the white people, when they saw the Negroes were doing good, pardon me for using the word Negro, but that was the word at the time. He was a Negro or he was colored. When they saw the Negroes doing good in Greenwood, what did they do? Instead of them standing back and applauding this ability of the black people to pull themselves up out of poverty, no. The white folks went over there and destroyed the whole town. Why? Because they were jealous of the advances and the advantages and the accumulated wealth of these colored people. Just say colored people. And so they burned down the town. They burned down the houses, but they looted those houses and took all of their possessions to themselves, anything they felt of value. And they burned the banks, and they burned the doctor's offices, and they burned the dentist's offices, and they burned the schools, and they burned the theaters, and they burned the houses. And a lot of times they burn up the people of Greenwood. So that is this what Mr. Ed Bloom has done is a replica of that paradigm that was used against the people of Greenwood. The black people had gotten their own self-sufficiency and independency, and the white folks couldn't stand it. They wanted to take that land, and they took that land and accused all of the black people of wanted to rape white women. Well, no black folks wanted to rape no white woman. We had our own women. You know, but that was one of the excuses that the mob used to justify their invasion and their destruction of Greenwood. Gap Street, Archie Street, and Pine Street. Used to be a band out here called the Gap Band, which started right there in Tulsa. But I digress. But at any rate, you see how white privilege feels that it is justified in restricting or retarding the growth or the progress of black people. Even now, we're dealing with this retrenchment. And the United States Supreme Court, which is nothing but 5 minutes, but a bunch of yahoos, has managed to get itself above the law. Clarence Thomas is above the law, according to him. Alito is above the law, according to him. But thank God, Ms. Ocasio-Cortez has invoked impeachment for these two justices, these false justices, these injustices is what they should be called. Now, listen, I know that ain't going nowhere because the Congress is dominated by the Republicans. And the Democrats don't have enough votes to override it to carry it through the motion of impeachment in the Senate. I know it's not going to go anywhere, but I'm glad Ms. Ocasio-Cortez at least had the gumption to point the finger at these two miscreants on the highest court in the land, the U.S. Supreme Court. They got lifetime tenure until they retire, but yet they have overstepped their bounds, and we need to shake them up because these rulings, they have put the president above the law. Not this president, Joe Biden, but this miscreant, this felon, they put Donald Trump above the law. And if Donald Trump can become, who is a convicted felon, mind you, can become the president again, then everybody below him that has to fill out these applications that ask the question, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And you know, in most places, if you got a felony, you can't even get a job. And but if Donald Trump, a 34-time convicted felon, can get the job of the president of the United States, then everybody, they need to take that box off of every application that is on. It's on your loans, it's on your, naturally your housing loans. You're going to get Section 8, you got to answer that question. And if you say felony, you can't get Section 8. You can't get public housing. You can't get food stamps. Now, how you going to live if you can't get public housing, can't get food stamps, and won't nobody hire you? But if Donald Trump, who is a convicted felon, can have that access to get the highest job in the land, then surely me or you or your relatives or your friends, they should not hold us to that same standard where they restrict us from voting, restrict us from getting food stamps, all of that. You know. Anyway, I've talked my time. I hear the music in the background is low right now, but they're gonna break it up. But at any rate, you see the dilemma that we are in. And again, I say this is what effect of white privilege. White privilege. And us non-white people, we got to speak up and pray against this usurping of justice. This is a usurping of justice, a supplanting of justice. This isn't righteousness. Anyway, as I get out of here, I always tell you to pray, and you can see why you need to pray now, because we've got to get Joe Biden back in the White House. We've got to get him re-elected, because you can't have this tyrant who has already said that he's going to be a dictator on day one. You sure don't want that boy. And so pray and vote like your life depends on it, because it do. Take somebody with you to vote. Tell everybody in your house, in your community, in your church, you got to vote. All right? All right. And remember, if you're working on a job and they don't want to pay you, don't waste your time, don't waste your life, don't waste your career. If they don't want to pay you, don't work for them. Thank you now. Thank you, Doc.